Hello, everyone, and welcome back for episode 2 of our NRL 2026 club season previews. I'm joined again by Sam, should I say, from Wobble and Jaw Sports. How are we, mate?
G'day, Dor. G'day, everyone. I'm good, man. Always in a good mood to talk rugby league with you.
Especially talking about the Melbourne Storm, the runners-up in 2025. Look, let's get straight into it, Sam. I think we can touch straight on in regards to how the Storm went last season, finishing in second place. To me personally, the Storm were a really hard team. Look, they obviously finished in the top 4, finishing in second place. But for me, their form was really up and down throughout the whole season. They were able to get wins where they didn't really play very well at all. And I think throughout the season, they really struggled to actually play their best football. But as you know, with the Melbourne Storm, they just find a way, and they just, again, I think I had them probably finishing. I had them in the top 8, but I had them towards the bottom half. I just thought that there was going to be a bit of a drop off, but that wasn't the case. But you look, like you said, their performances probably weren't consistent enough to warrant top 4 finish, but they were just able to get some wins where probably other teams just wouldn't have been able to get the chocolates.
Yeah, it surely took them a bit of time to warm up into the season. They did defeat the Penrith Panthers in round 3 and put a flogging on Manly, but then you look on further onwards and you look at the Dolphins game, 42-22. They lost to the Dolphins up at Suncorp. I'd say that was maybe a turning point in the season where they probably got the punch to the face that they probably needed. But then the back end of the season came, and the likes, the predictable likes, the elite players in the Melbourne Storm spine and thereabouts sprinkled throughout, raised up to the challenge because they have had the experience before. They were in the grand final only 12 months prior, and in those important games in the run towards the finals, they found a bit of defensive tenacity that boded well for them. But yeah, I'd say that they warmed up. It took them a little while to warm up. That second half was better than their first half of their 2025 campaign, I'd say, Dor.
Yeah, well, if I'm looking at it here, they had a good run from round 21 to round 25, winning all their games there against some solid opposition. If you actually look at it there, like the Bulldogs, Panthers, Storm, the Eels were playing well, were able to get the job done there. Good win over the Roosters as well. But then I look at this game here, and round 26, a 40-10 thumping by the Roosters. I think it just sort of sums up the season from the Melbourne Storm, where they were able to string together some results, but then they weren't prone to being potentially blown out. You've seen a couple of performances here. 30-14 is not too bad, but like 40-10 here against the Roosters in round 26. Like you said, you also touched on up here as well. They went down to the Dolphins 42-22. So there was a couple of times there throughout the season where they actually went down by a big margin. But as you said, to be honest, the 3/4 or most of the season, their defense was like pretty solid. I thought their defense was pretty good, apart from their attack was their problem. I just think they consistently just were really struggled to basically show up in attack. I thought their attack was a bit clunky a lot of the times. Look, they still did put on points. And you did see, like, when I scrolled up through here, there's a couple of huge score lines that they were able to put on. 38-14 against the Cowboys, 64-0 against the Tigers. They 42-14 over the Warriors, 48-24 against Manly, and 56-18 to against the Eels in round 1. So they were able to score points, but it just, I don't know. I think for me, just they obviously did outstanding. They made the grand final. and gave the Broncos a real run for their money there. They were leading a majority of the game, the Melbourne Storm, in that grand final. But for me, I don't know, it was just a really weird season. They just didn't really find top gear at all, but they were still able to go all the way to the grand final without really hitting top gear. I think, a few players going in and out through, multitude of issues and whatnot throughout the year didn't help at all. But look, overall, I think considering with how they played throughout the whole season with the ebbs and flows that we've touched on, I think you've got to be very happy with the making it to the grand final there and only going down by 4 points, and one of the great all-time individual performances from Reece Walsh. If Walsh wasn't on the field, the Storm probably win that grand final, Sam.
Yeah, master coach Craig Bellamy used his magic once again. He lost Jerome Hughes in the final couple of weeks in the run to the finals, if memory isn't going up against me, and then lost Jerome Hughes upon his return game against the Brisbane Broncos at Suncorp. Yep. So it did fall down to Cameron Munster and Harry Grant, and there was that famous game that you alluded to before where he literally dragged the Melbourne Storm to a victory against the Sydney Roosters at Allianz Stadium, but they needed a platform, and I thought Uto Ikamanu, whilst it did take him half a season to get going, once he did get going, absolutely, he created enough or provided enough of a platform for the Storm to do his thing. And there were a couple of other unsung heroes as well that I'm sure that we'll get to momentarily when we preview the teams for 2026. But someone like a young Lasati, I thought was very impressive. I've liked the cut of his jib for quite a while now, and he's someone that just complemented the work that Uto Ikamanu and Josh King were doing as well. So yeah, no, there's definitely a couple of supporting players that do deserve a rap, but I do think that Munster, Grant, and Uto Ikamanu are one of the reasons why they were able to keep their heads so far up above water in that run to the finals, Dor.
Yeah, well, that's basically that's huge with the I was just thinking with Lasati there, Sam. Look, he was mammoth for the Storm, and due to those performances there at the back end, that secured him an extension with the Melbourne Storm. He signed at the back end or at the end completion, or basically this off season between last season and this upcoming season here in 2026. So yeah, he was outstanding. But look, there's a few things and that we really need to touch on, Sam, with the Melbourne Storm, that we will touch on very shortly. I just first, before we go any further, I just know that the people down in Melbourne are doing it tough with some severe bushfires down there at the moment. So on behalf of Sam and I just want to send our thoughts and prayers to everyone down there in Melbourne. Hopefully you guys can stay safe. And look, hopefully we can ease your thoughts at the moment with a bit of Melbourne Storm talk. So look, without further ado, Sam, let's get on to the next topic. And look, that is the gains and the losses for the Melbourne Storm. And this is huge, especially, look, I know we've only got the 2026 gains and losses up on the screen now, but I can't remember the last time that I've seen the Melbourne Storm get poached this bad and seen a mass exodus of players. Today came out that this morning that the Melbourne Storm released a statement this morning, and they have said that it is all done for Nick Meaney and Wishart at the end of this season. So Wishart and Meaney will not be in Storm colours at the end of this season, which I think is a huge loss. Meaney's been outstanding since coming down from the Bulldogs, and Wishart's been absolutely outstanding whenever he's needed to come in and do a job. He's been able to really grasp that opportunity and do an outstanding job as well. Look, this is a big list, a lot bigger than the Broncos, in my opinion. A lot of key players that have departed, as well as some solid players coming in to the fold there for the Melbourne Storm. So look, let's start with the losses first, Sam. I feel like we could spend a little bit of time here. So the big
Mhm.
one was Ryan Pappenhausen has been released and sort of in innuendo at the moment, Sam, where he's just not really doing anything at the moment. He's just playing a bit of golf and just enjoying some time off. Which, look, Ryan Pappenhausen has been through a hell with injuries throughout his career. So I can understand, mentally as well, the tolling, the amount of times he'd come back and get injured. So for me, for him to, have a break, whether we see Ryan Pappenhausen in the NRL again, I'm not sure. I really hope he does come back because I thought he was an absolutely great player and he was huge in that grand final. Yes, he made a couple of, questionable mistakes, but I thought that you could see that until the end, he was absolutely trying his backside off. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the other Storm players, but I thought, out of a lot of players on the park, I thought Pappenhausen was the one showing a lot of ticker, and we'll touch on his stats and whatnot in a second. Grant Anderson, look, he's Mr. Fix-It, came in and filled in plenty of positions there in the back line, majority either center or wing for the Melbourne Storm. He's been outstanding throughout his time at the club. And that's going to be a big loss there for them. They're probably going to rely on the likes of, say, Moses Leo and some other players as well, potentially. The other man that they've signed, maybe Watara. Is it Watare? I think. Sorry if I pronounced it incorrectly. From the Raiders.
Watiri, I believe it is.
Watiri. Yeah. So yeah, Watiri as well. So huge in that regard for the Melbourne Storm not having Mr. Fix-It. Mr. Anderson, as I like to call him. Bronson Garlick as well. Look, he's been great for the Storm. Again, when either Grant goes on representative duties or he goes down with injury, I think he's just like Wishart, really. He's just takes his opportunity. And look, I think he'll be pushing for probably a bench spot for South Sydney this season. And the other big one, in my opinion, it's probably outside of the Pappenhausen one. I think this is the second biggest one, just in regards to the fact of, Hughes of late really suffering a lot of injuries and missing a fair bit of time. And then if you think of it now, for the Storm to lose Wishart and Pezzett, in back-to-back years, I think if you told me that maybe the start of last season, I would have fell off this chair here and hit the floor pretty hard because I would not have believed that at all. I thought they would have for sure tried to lock one of these players down, but I guess with the quality of Munster and Hughes in that halves and not really a clear opening for one of these players to get regular 80 minutes of football every week, I think it's just unfortunately played into their demise. I think both of these players as well, Wishart and Pezzett, have done Melbourne a real solid. Like, they could have left earlier, but they stayed around and only played a handful of games. And I think you can only do that for so long before you've got to put yourself first. And, you don't want to be playing on the bench or New South Wales Cup every week when, you're as good as, you're a quality player and you'd be playing probably first grade at any other club, just not the Melbourne Storm. So what are your thoughts on the losses for the Melbourne Storm, Sam?
It feels like over the past 3 years now that the Storm seem to have more of a difficult off-season as the years have gone by. And this, by far, as you alluded to before, is the most crazy off-season that they've had in terms of recruitment and retention. There is another name there in the losses that I'm sorry if my timing is off. Maybe you wanted to save this conversation for a little bit later, but they've also lost Alicia Katoa for the entire 2026 campaign. So that's with the greatest of sensitivity and respect. We still wish him well in his recovery. But the other rumor that's going around, the current rumor, is that Zach Lomax might be wanting to head into Amy Parker's Melbourne Storm player for the 2026 season and possibly even 2027. But the Parramatta Eels, they are battling that at the moment. They don't want that to happen. So watch this space. So that might be another addition there for the Melbourne Storm. But
Can I
Ryan
ask a quick
Papenhuyzen,
question?
yeah, go.
If Lomax is to come, where does he play?
That's exactly right, mate. Well, I mean, we've sorted out our team list, and we'll get to our predicted round one team list shortly. But yeah, it's a very, very difficult one, mate, for sure.
I think we can touch on it maybe once we both go through our teams where we
Yes.
think potentially Lomax could fit in. But look, Parramatta, like you said, Sam, they're holding standing firm. And to be honest, that is look 100% respectable. I think that the Eels, with how it's all panned out, with look, nothing was set in stone, and with the uncertainty of R360 and whatnot, there was no guarantee that it was going to go ahead. And but obviously Lomax was so set on what was going on, and potentially there might be more to this story. But yeah, he was set on going to R360, worked on his release, got released from Parramatta, but they set those firm clauses that he was not able to play for another NRL club within the contract that he had signed until I think that was the end of 2028. He was supposed to be at the Eels. So he cannot play for another club that, unless they relinquish these terms, is for another club until the end of 2028. Without getting Parramatta's blessing. So if he wants to play for the Storm, which, look, all the rumors and like Sam said, what's going around, it looks like he's 110% wanting to play for the Storm, and the Storm are 110% very keen on getting him there. So what the latest is, which Sam, I think was didn't touch on, but was probably going to allude to anyway, is that there are reports of a potential player swap for Zach Lomax to get him there. And I think that is more than enough fair, because Parramatta are going to get something in return for Lomax basically shafting them. Like, the utmost respect to Lomax. I understand what he's trying to do, and I understand what Parramatta are trying to do, but just how it looks at the moment and with what's happened with R360, it's not a really good look at all for Lomax.
No.
So, but unfortunately, a man that we will talk about in length, but the man that is in question is Jack Howarth, is the name that has been mentioned for the swap for Zach Lomax. And I just don't think that the Storm will be wanting to depart with Howarth, especially with some uncertainty around Lomax. And, you know, you and I have had this discussion before. He left the Dragons there when they were looking at, willing to get him at fullback and pay him big money there. He was sick of playing on the wing, apparently, for the Dragons, and he didn't want to play there anymore. He went to Parramatta, and look, he ended up on the wing, and he played State of Origin on the wing. And look, if I'm going to be brutally honest, Zach Lomax's best position is the wing. So, yeah, it's a massive can of worms. And like Sam said, it is something that we really, that everyone in the rugby league circle is keeping their close eye on, because like I said, Lomax is really keen. He's hiring lawyers and whatnot to try and to get it to happen. So it could get messy, but we'll see what happens. But anything else on these players that we've mentioned here, Sam? Obviously, I think Garlic sort of only came in here and there. Anderson was a sort of Mr. Fix-It, but probably more of a regular player than what he might be potentially at the Broncos, for example. And Pezzett was just a Mr. Fix-It when someone went down. Look, they still have Wishart there, but yeah, Pappenhausen's the huge one, and we will touch on that a bit later when I talk on his replacement at fullback, and we'll sort of touch on Pappy there, Sam. But anything else? Last thoughts?
No, forgive me ignorance, mate, or me brain, bro. But have we spoken about the gains yet?
No, we have not got to the gains, and that's what we're going to get to right now. So, Davey Moale, interesting situation. Same like the Jonah Pezzett contract. Look, Pezzett signed a 1-year deal with Parramatta and then is off to the Brisbane Broncos in 2027. And that's the same thing here with David Mwale, except with different clubs. So Mwale's come down for Melbourne for one season, and then he is off to Manly in 2027. So I think it's a huge gain. David Mwale, he's shown a lot. Look, I wouldn't say a lot. He's shown like he is a good player and he deserves to be in NRL level. Has he really exploded? No, not yet. But look, Craig Bellamy's track record with bringing players down to Melbourne and turning them into something. Look, Stefano was a great player at West Tigers, but I don't think he ever played that well for on a week-to-week basis that he did in the Storm's campaign last season. In that back end stretch there, he was massive. And then we've seen countless other players that have come down there. Look, Josh King could barely get a crack at Newcastle and came down there, and he's basically played every game for the Storm. And look, there is an absolute heap of players that I could go on and list that Craig Bellamy and the Melbourne Storm have turned into regular first grade players and good players in that, basically coming out of the blue. Look at Eli Katoa as well, for an example, as well. Like, he was struggling to get regular football at the Warriors. He was sort of in and out, lacked consistency. And look, he's been one of the best second rowers in the comp ever since he came to the Melbourne Storm. So look, that's great. Trent Tallow as well, Sam, returns back to Melbourne as well from the Penrith Panthers. So that's a good one there. Helps with the departure of, say, Garlick and Pezzett, someone that can be that utility role as well if Wishart goes into the starting halves or what happens there. We have seen Wishart go to the wing. God help me, I hope he doesn't go back there. But look, he can get it. He's very versatile, Wishart, and he can get it done everywhere. Watare, as Sam would just touched on before, he's come down. Down or up? Up. No, down from the Raiders. Sorry. And so that it could be a good signing as well. That provides them a bit of depth with the departure of Grant Anderson in the back line. And I've left him for last because reports are that he's absolutely training the house down right now. And that is Jack Hetherington. Has come from, what was he, Bulldogs, then to Newcastle, and then now he's come down to Melbourne. So when he did sign, Sam, there was thoughts that they were saying that he was going to be a potential replacement for Katoa, and that was sort of the signing. But I don't see Jack Hetherington playing in the back row personally. I see him playing in the middle. You'll see that in my team list that I'll show you guys shortly. But yeah, if he can get something, look, Jack Hetherington's shown that he can be a good player, but his discipline has killed him throughout his whole season. It hasn't been as bad recently, but if he can sort of get that into line, that could be huge because for Melbourne, because with these losses, they're going to need these players that they've brought in to really stand up. Sam. So what are your thoughts on the gains for the Melbourne Storm?
Do you imagine the scenes that are going to happen if Jack Hetherington does something dumb and then it's a shot of Craig Bellamy and then it's Hetherington versus Bellamy in the sheds? That's going to be really intense. I hope that happens. It'd be spectacular.
It would be, especially with the amount of times they'd go to Bellamy if they'd made a mistake or something like that and be blowing up Deluxe and everyone's giggling, whether they're at home on the couch watching or they're at the stadium in the ground watching and he comes up on the big screen. But Sam,
in all seriousness, Jack Hetherington, he's had a few good games that have lifted my eyebrow and say, Jesus, man, if you do just rein it in, you got something. And I'm thinking that if Bellamy gets the best out of Jack Hetherington, he could be a real mongrel in 2026 for the Melbourne Storm for sure. Davey Mwale, I'm on the same boat as you. I really like the cut of his jib. And Trent Tallow, man, it just sniffs of out of nowhere signing that goes really well for the Melbourne Storm, honestly. So, they're not bad pickups, but definitely the losses outweigh the gains at this current juncture.
100%. Yeah, the losses are far worse than the gains, but the gains, like you said, fill the spots that the Storm need to basically fill from these departures. So whether
And
they're not really the same type of caliber of player, but they're
must apologize.
still really solid players.
Yeah, apologies, man. Sorry
Yeah,
to
you're
speak
right.
over the top of you, but the other
All right.
loss too, there is Nelson Asafa Solomona that we haven't touched on as
Yes.
well. And so Jack Hetherington and Davey Mawali, I guess both of those two gentlemen fill up the one space that Nelson has had over the years, man. But Nelson, he's going to be a massive loss. And I just want to say just one stat. I know the stats are coming right
Yeah,
at
all
the
right.
end, but the stats say that the Melbourne Storm are the best post-contact meter team in the NRL, 15,149. It's not too much more than Penrith. Penrith are right there on the back of Melbourne Storm, but without Nelson of Solomona there, who I'm sure made up about 13,000 of those post-contact meters, it's going to be difficult. It'll be very interesting to see how well they go when Uto Ikamanu does have to improve, but I'm sort of getting ahead of myself there.
No, that is actually very true. I think it was just due to the fact that he barely played at all. I don't know. That's my bad there with missing Nelson, Sam. But look, I just think Hetherington and Nelson, I think, are basically going to be the same player. Both got issues with a hot head. And look, I hope Bellamy learned some lessons from last year with Nelson Asofa Solomona that he can implement with Jack Hetherington, because Nelson's discipline was still absolutely rubbish last season, and it hurt the Storm badly in a couple of games. So, and that saw him basically miss the whole finals campaign as well. So, yeah, hopefully for the Storm and Jack Hetherington's viewpoint, that they can really iron out the creases in his game, which is his discipline, man, and they can really get going. But let's move on now to the train and trial list for 2026 for the Melbourne Storm. And look, Sam, you and I were discussing this before we went to air, and that is this train and trial list is all basically, they've all been in and around the Melbourne system and circles. There we got Sully Pole, as Sam was telling me earlier. As you can see down, the other photos of the players are down below there. He is the brother of Fanua Pole. So that will be interesting. Keegan Russell Smith, we've seen him briefly in Melbourne colours, whether that be in trial football as well. And he looks like a handy player. We got Angus Hinchney, that is, I believe you were saying, Sam, the son of a former Rabbitohs forward, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Yep. And then we've got Preston Conn and Mitch Jennings there. So look, Jennings is a center second rower. Obviously, Sully Pole, big front rower. Preston Conn is actually the Jersey flag premiership winning captain, second rower. And then you've got, we've touched on Russell Smith. He's a halfback, and Hitchney is a lock. So a bit of good versatility there. Maybe no real, wingers or fullbacks, but with what the Melbourne Storm need at the moment, it's majority in the forwards, and basically all these players here are all forwards outside of Russell Smith, Sam. So that will be huge, and wish these guys all the very best.
Yeah, of course. And this might be a really good transition to get into our next subject. But those last three players are in Angus, Preston, and Mitch. Three of those players played in the premiership winning Jersey flag team this year, beating Penrith Panthers to the tune of 38-16. Sully Pole was involved in the Jersey flag team as well. He did not participate, I believe, in that game. And then Keegan Russell Smith, he is a halfback, and you sort of got to think to yourself that with Tyrone Wishart moving on, Keegan Russell Smith has all of a sudden got a very important 2026 campaign to impress upon anybody, everybody, especially Craig Bellamy, that maybe for the year after, that maybe he can be a Tyrone Wishart-esque sort of replacement in jersey number 14. So it's a big one for Keegan Russell Smith and a few of these jersey flag players, man.
100%, Sam. I think we'll touch on the pathways and whatnot. I just got that up actually while you were talking there to get that ready for later on. We will touch on that a bit later. Sort of keep the same sort of format as we did last night,
Yes, sir.
or last episode, the very first one of these season previews with the Broncos. Going to try and keep the same sort of format. So we're going to move to the Melbourne Storm draw.
Let's focus on the big boys. Let's focus on the big boys still.
All right, let's focus on this draw. All right, so let's as you can see the draws in front of you, I'm going to say a little bit about it. So look, the Storm, as you can see, they've got 2 buys during the State of Origin period, and also they've secured 2 home games where there is no AFL in Melbourne, which is huge. So they should get
Massive.
2 really big turnouts there with no AFL football to take away from the Melbourne Storm those 2 weekends. That is in round 1 and over the AFL gather round weekend as well. The NRL has also given them a bye after they take their home game against Manly to Perth for the first time. So you can see there, round 23, they're versing the Manly Seagulls over in Perth. The week after, they get a lovely bye. So that's lovely from the NRL and the AI there for the Melbourne Storm. Anything you want to just touch on, Sam, before I go into the teams that they play twice and once?
So in between the rounds of round 13 and 19, they only leave Melbourne on the one occasion, I believe. So for about 6 weeks, or for 5 weeks there in a 6-week stretch, right in the middle of State of Origin, with a couple of buys as well, that is their position to really strike and get some points, because their run to the finals, mate. We looked at the Brisbane Broncos recently, our first one. Please, everybody, go and check that one out. But checking the run to the finals here for the Melbourne Storm, good golly friggin' gosh, mate.
It's not good, basically, from about round 20. Roosters, Rabbitohs, Bulldogs, Manly, bye. What a great time the bye comes in there. Panthers, Broncos, and Sharks. So, yeah, like you said, I expect the Rabbitohs to be a lot better this season. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Probably the easiest game there is probably Manly. But, yeah, that is going to be a really tough run home for the Melbourne Storm.
And the last fortnight of their season is on the road, Suncorp and Ocean Protect at the Sharkies. So their final home game is round number 25 against the Penrith Panthers. So just adds more to the pressure. So yeah, they've got a pretty comfortable 6 weeks leading up into that run into the finals, and they're going to have to really capitalize on it, because yeah, they're running the gauntlet in their run to the finals, man. That's going to be really intense for the Melbourne Storm.
All right, let's go to who they play twice, Sam, and who they play once in their bye round. So they verse the Raiders, Bulldogs, Broncos, Panthers, Roosters, Seagulls, Eels, and Rabbitohs twice. So you think about Raiders, minor premiers, the Dogs were up there last year. Broncos, top 4, getting the gong. Panthers, they were outstanding. The Roosters should be, their team on paper is outstanding. They should be even better. The Eels showed at the back end of last season they were really finding their groove and really believing in Jason Riles' his coaching ways. And look, probably Seagulls and Rabbitohs there. The Rabbitohs I expect to be a lot better, especially if they can have some luck with their health this season. Manly, I'm really unsure about. New era for Manly under Tommy Turbo with DCE moving on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what we're going to get from Manly, but look, though, that is a pretty strong list of teams that they are playing twice, the Melbourne Storm.
Very much so. And yeah, just to be more specific, that 6-week stretch between 13 and 19, their only away game is against the Manly Sea Eagles. The rest of them, there's a couple of buys and there's about 3 home games in there. And then in the run to the finals, they take on Manly again, but they're taking a home game to HBF Park in Perth as well. So there's an added level of travel there for the Melbourne Storm in that run to the finals.
So the teams that the Melbourne Storm play once, they've got the Sharks, the Warriors, the Dolphins, the Cowboys, the Tigers, Dragons, Titans, and Knights. Their buys, as you can see on the lovely template there, is in rounds 15, 18, and 24. Before I give my final verdict and my grading, Sam, let's touch on the amount of games that they play against the top 8 and bottom 9 teams from last year in 2025. So they played 12 games against the top 8 from last year, 6 against the top 4, 12 against the bottom 9, 5 against the bottom 4. They have one 5-day turnaround. I'm pretty sure, if my memory serves me correctly, actually, I can just scroll up. That is the same as the Broncos. They have one 5-day turnaround. 6-day turnarounds, the Storm have 8. So that's one more than the Broncos did that we touched on in episode 1. And then the 7+ day turnarounds, they have 14, which is one less than the Brisbane Broncos. So now the final verdict, and then I'll get your thoughts, Sam, from me. It's a pretty mixed bag for the Melbourne Storm. This draw, there's some things to like about the draw from, as we said, a commercial perspective with those games that are not going to be affected by AFL. They should get a strong attendance in those games. And just coming down from Melbourne, it is absolutely sport heaven down there. I can imagine those games doing really well, and they'll get good attendance. The Melbourne Storm in those games where the AFL is not running. Look, they've got great games, but I think they've got a really tough run, especially just like we touched on that end to the season, especially those last couple of weeks away from home after playing so many good teams in that last couple of months. I said that the Broncos draw for me was a B plus. I'm probably saying a C to C plus for the Melbourne Storm for their draw. Not as good as the Broncos. It's a good draw, but yeah, not the best, unfortunately, for the Melbourne Storm.
Yeah, it is harder than the Brisbane Broncos, not by a hell of a lot, but it is harder. I'm not one to give apologies. I'm not one to give rankings or
No, you're right.
ratings
That's just for me.
on these draws. Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah, I've said what I've needed to say. There's a nice cushiony section in the middle. The run home is insane. The start to their campaign, you got the Bronx at home hosting that grand final rematch. That's absolutely enormous. And then Panthers. But inside that first 5 weeks or so, they're taking on Eels, Dragons, and Cowboys. As much as it kills me to say it, 3 of those teams were obviously outside of the 8. In 2025. So 2 of the first 5 games against elite opposition, but then they come, it levels out a little bit. So yeah, it's more difficult in my opinion than the Brisbane Broncos campaign or fixture, I should say.
Yeah. The only reason you do exactly what you're doing, Sam, and I'm loving your input. I just like to sort of give the grading for the viewer or the listener at home, just so you can sort of get an understanding where I think, and a lot of people sort of think who want to give their grading, rank the draws. So look, at the moment, Broncos are on top for the best draw thus far from the 2 teams that we've done, and then the Melbourne Storm are behind them. And we're going to go through all the rankings. I'll give a grade for every draw throughout all these team reviews, previews, should I say, for the 2026 season. Now, before we move on, the last thing, unlike the Broncos, the Storm are in the trial competition before the season, in the preseason trials. The Broncos, obviously, 2 unofficial trials in the World Club Challenge, but the Storm have 2 official trials, one against the Raiders, Sam, and one against the Titans, I believe. Was the one in the Raiders at Mudgee, was it? And
No, Seaford Oval in Queanbeyan.
Queanbeyan, lovely. So yeah, Queanbeyan against the Raiders. You went down there, didn't you, last year? Was it last year you went to Seaford Oval?
No,
Or
don't
was the
talk
year
about that,
before?
mate. I got COVID and then couldn't go. No, don't bring that up.
Oh,
Move on.
sorry,
Keep
bro.
going. Keep going.
I remember
Ooh.
watching it. I was thinking you were there. Anyway, and again up against the Titans. That's up at the Sunny Coast, isn't it? I believe.
Yes. Yes,
Against the
sir.
Titans, so technically a home game, but up at the Sunshine Coast there. All right, that's the Melbourne Storm draw. Now let's get into the our team list for round one. So I'll go first, Sam. I'll spiel off my team. Unlike the Broncos team, Sam and I have slight changes or differences in our teams. So I'm going to go first with mine. I've got Suafalongo at the back. We got Warbrick and Coates on the wings. Howarth and Meaney in the centers. Munster at 5'8". Hughes at halfback. Props are Stefano and Josh King. Hooker is Harry Grant. The back row, now there is a bit of an asterisk over Sean Bloor with what's happening. We're not going to talk about that or go into it, and we don't want any mention of that. That is a completely separate issue, and the NRL and the Storm will handle that respectively. But look, if Bloor is out, I would just move Joe Chan that I have in 18th man up into jersey 11. But Sean Bloor is there. Lasati is my other back rower. Sam touched on him, and we did make a brief mention. He was outstanding when he came in on the back row for the Melbourne Storm at the back end of their 2025 campaign. So I've got him there, and I'm going with Fiji captain Tui Kamakamika at lock. I just think that his experience there, I think, will be preferred potentially over Alec McDonald. Look, I wouldn't be against Alec McDonald starting at lock, but I just like what Alec McDonald can bring from the bench. I think, as Kamakamika is getting on a bit in his career, I think a fresh legs like Alec McDonald has been absolutely great coming off the bench for the Storm. So I don't really want to move him into the starting team, but I think he's going to be outstanding for the Storm this season and probably play a few more minutes coming from the bench, in my opinion. The bench, Wishart, look, very self-explanatory, especially with the departures of Bronson Garlick and Jonah Pezzett. Easy pick, and Wishart was great in those appearances that he came in and played. We talked about that in length earlier. I've got Jack Hetherington, the enforcer, the fiery enforcer, coming in on the bench. I've got Alec McDonald, like I just touched on before. And then I've got the 1-year rental, Davey Mawale on the bench, who I think is going to be outstanding this season. And I think is going to learn a heap from Craig Bellamy this season. I've got Joe Chan there in jersey 18. Look, Joey Chan was outstanding for the Storm, just like Lasati when he had his opportunity there due to injuries, suspensions, and whatnot. He was outstanding, very versatile, can play in the centers as well, a bit like Howarth can play in the back row as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does potentially get in the back row at some point throughout this season if he's not done in that swap deal. We could see Moses Leo move into the centers, but we will continue on. I've got Josiah Paulu that came up from the Gold Coast Titans. That was that halfway through last season?
Yes, I would say. Yes.
Yeah. Did he even play a game for the Storm?
No.
I was gonna say he might have got named in the TLT on Tuesday in the 21 or something, but I don't think he ended up playing. But I've got him there. I think he'll play a bit this season, especially with, just like we touched on at the start, Sam, probably the issue with the Melbourne Storm team is that their forward pack. And we saw that in that grand final, unfortunately. Look, their forwards were great, and especially with the omission of Eli Katoa that we touched on as well. We also wish Eli Katoa all the best. We saw absolutely beautiful scenes the other day that he's now back at training and doing some light work. So that's absolutely outstanding. But don't get far-fetched in thinking that because he's back at training that, he'll be back this season. They're going to give him some time. And look, respectfully, he deserves as much time as he deserves coming back from what happened there. Anyway, back to the team. My last player is look, I was looking at Trent Talau, but I'm just sort of looking at the forward pack and I'm trying to get as many forwards in there as possible. And I think Wishart's just beautiful as versatility. No one's getting in over Wishart, in my opinion, for the versatility role. So I liked Lazarus Valepu. I've got him in there in jersey 20. I think he's shown in his brief stints for the Storm that he can tuck the ball under the wing and run it hard and straight. So he's a good forward, young forward. Got no problems at all with Lazarus Valepu. But that is my starting 1 to 20 for round one, Sam. Let's have a look at your team, my friend. The mic is yours.
Yes, sir. So 1 down through to 12, we're exactly the same. The differences come from 13 onwards. I do think that Alec McDonald, who has started at lock previously in years gone by, I think he would be better suited to start, and you then bring Kamikamitha off of the bench. I just think Kamikamitha's don't mean to be like ageist or whatever. I just do think that his age is something that I'm thinking about, and I think he'd be better suited to come off the bench, provide an impact like he did in 2025 as well. But I like Alec McDonald, and really I've got no issues if it is Tui or if it is Alec. Tyron Wishart remains at 14. Joe Chan, he showed great versatility in 2025, and I'd love to keep him on the bench there. And then you've got Davey Mawali as well, the one you wonder, as you just said. I think he'll learn a hell of a lot underneath Craig Bellamy. I've got Trent Talau. I do think that you need to have like a half or a centre sort of a player as 18 to 19 or even 20 player. Jack Hetherington, I don't think he'll start 2026. I think it might be a month or so before we see him even named on the bench, for example. And then Josiah Pahulu, man, he showed such great promise when he was up at the Gold Coast Titans. And it's such a shame that it went to hell in a handbasket for him and that club. So underneath Craig Bellamy, man, he could be amazing. But again, like Jack Hetherington, it might be a little while before we see him in first grade. And your selection of Va'alepu as well, that's someone that I definitely looked at. And yeah, there's been a few games where you've gone, gee, Struth, he's just a...
Didn't he? He had an absolute huge game, I'm pretty sure, Valepu against the Cowboys. If
I'm pretty sure as well.
Queensland, yes.
No, I agree. I think it might have even been his first grade debut, mate. Honestly,
yeah,
I think so, man. But yeah, no, Valepu for sure will also feature in first grade as well. But that's just my 1 down through to 20. So not much differences between me and Dor from 1 down through to 12. But then we combat each other when it comes to the interchange in the lock position.
Last thing, we're going to touch on it just like we touched on it before. So let's look inside the crystal ball, and Zach Lomax ends up coming to the Storm. Ooh. Where does he play?
I think he pushes. It's hard to say because Nick Meaney has already said that he's gone. He's already signed for the Perth Bears. So would Craig Bellamy be ruthless enough to say, well, Nick Meaney, you can sit out then, sort of a la Dylan Brown for 2025 and Jason Riles? Or does Jack Howarth not simply, but he moves to second row, and that might push Lasati back onto the bench, and then you have Lomax play at centre. But his best position was playing on the wings. So it's a difficult one, but I'd probably move either Meaney or Howarth for Lomax to play in that centre spot, honestly.
It makes the most sense, doesn't it, that he comes in and plays centre. He has played there before, and then you move simply if Howarth isn't the man that is player swapped with Lomax to Melbourne, that he just goes into the centre position, and then Howarth moves down to the second row like you just touched on. For me, I think that Lomax has to be on the wing. I just think, and I don't like Xavier Coates for me is locked. It's Will Warbrick's the one, and Warbrick's been great. Is he too big to play center? Like, is that something? Could Will Warbrick play center? Like, I just think probably not. I don't think his skills are as say Lomax can easily play center, but I just think it's not his best position. So yeah, I think if we're in all seriousness, it's likely that if Howarth is the man that they do the player swap with, then he just takes Howard's spot, Lomax, in the centers. But if they manage to not lose any of these players that are on Sam or my team list and manage to get Lomax down there, I think you'll find that Howarth will move to the second row, and you'll find like Lasardi move to the bench or something instead of a Joe Chan or a Jack Hetherington or something like that. But look, that's we'll see what happens. But like you said, Sam, will be interesting to see what Bellamy does there throughout the season with Meaney off to the Perth Bears. That's all signed, sealed, delivered on a long-term deal. And Wishart is reportedly linked to the Bears as well. Nothing official yet. I know some pages might have posted that it's done, but I haven't heard from any of my sources that it's signed, sealed, and delivered. I know he is talking to the Perth Bears, and look, I think that's where he's going to go. But until we get official confirmation, all we can go with is that he will not be at the Melbourne Storm for 2027. So that is that. Now, let's get to my breakout player. Very simple. Look, not as exciting maybe or as out of the blue as my Ben Tolte was for the Broncos, but I think this one's a pretty safe bet. And if he can stay healthy, we've seen what this man can do. He lights up the field, and he is absolutely outstanding, Su'a-Fa'alogo. And if, he can look at him there, he's looking absolutely shredded and ready, primed for a big season. And they've got such a good spine, the Melbourne Storm, with Munster, Hughes, and Grant. And we've seen his combination with all of them. And it's only going to get better as he plays on a more regular basis. Like you can see here, this is Sua's stats throughout his career. And look, again, like those players we touched on, showing massive show of faith to Melbourne to stay there, the quality of the player and the lack of game time that he has been playing. Obviously in 2024, he played a fair bit with the Pappenhausen injury there, but this season didn't really get that many games. But you can see there, look what he's played 22 games total. And look, he's got 14 tries. I think these stats, it's just like his stats are very raw. I think even though that he's only played 22 first class or first grade games, he's much better than that. He's absolutely lightning. He's a bit, to me, he's like, again, this is just my opinion, but I think he's a lot like Reece Walsh with what I've seen from Su'a-Fa'alogo. He's got absolute brilliance, but then he can do the odd dumb thing, whether it be throw a stupid flick pass or something like that. We have seen that from Falongo thus far in his career, but this is a mammoth step, and I think it's easy for him to be a Melbourne Storm breakout player, or the Melbourne Storm's breakout player in 2026, just due to the sheer fact of opportunity of getting that fullback jersey for the rest of the season with no real threat of losing it to anyone like a class of a Pappenhausen and whatnot, as Pappy's not there anymore. So he's got obviously a big shoes to fill. Like we look at Pappenhausen's stats here. Look, 15 tries for Pappenhausen, 11 line break assists, 12 line breaks last season. He is absolutely outstanding, and his support play is outstanding, especially through the middle of the field, supporting his halves or his forwards through the middle of the park. So there's definitely going to be some learning steps for Sewer, but I think he's going to absolutely have an A-plus season. I've got really big hype on Su'a-Fa'alogo. So he is my Melbourne Storm 2026 breakout player, Sam. But your breakout player, my friend, is Mr. Jack Howard. Take it away.
Yes, man. By by the way, don't disagree with anything that you said about Fa'alongo. He easily could be the breakout player of the year. He's only played 20 games and he has provided a truckload of really fun highlights so far in his young career. So good luck to him. Hopefully, touch wood, that he's not as injured as what he was in 2025 with that hamstring, I think it was. But Jack Howarth, some would say that he's already broken out. I think he's just really pounding upon that attic door at the moment.
33 games, Sam.
And what I want to touch on with him, Jack Howarth, with some of his stats, for such a young fella to have the frame of a second rower, but still have enough zip about him to play at center. His total running meters may not be the best, but the amount of, excuse my French, everybody, but the amount of shit carries that he is asked to produce by the opposition half, whoever's kicking towards him, and it results in him having that first hit up. He did so many hard yards in 2025, young Jack Howarth, and he was rewarded, I believe, to be part of Billy Slater's Queensland larger scale squad. Obviously, he didn't make his debut.
The Maroons kid right there. Yep.
But he's knocking on the door of Origin. Billy Slater, Billy Slater's got the attention of Jack Howarth or vice versa. So Jack Howarth, he is a really true, really strong player. And Jack Howarth, I think, if he can remain injury free and be disciplined, touch wood, I think he's going to really prove to people, show people how tough, how good he can really be, man. I think he's absolutely outstanding, young Jack Howarth, and I think he'll break out big time in 26.
Agree. I love Jack Howarth, Sam. Great player, and I do agree. Pardon the French, but yeah, the amount of shit carries that he had to do, and considering he's running 136 run meters a game the last 2 seasons, playing in the center position, a position where you're not really taking as many runs as, say, as your wingers, your fullbacks and whatnot. For him to be averaging those type of numbers, like that's elite center run meters that he's averaging. Jack Howarth, I'd say, I don't have Cantoni Staggs's stats in front of me, but he had a huge year, and I really see familiarity with sort of Jack Howarth in those runs. He's the sort of that strong running game that Staggs and Howarth both possess. So, look, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that Howarth's going to have a huge year, and hopefully for Melbourne fans that he is not lost for Zach Lomax. Now, onto the story. Now, the new pathways. We touched on the Broncos having a new feeder club, but the Storm have gone a new direction. So the Storm lost the Falcons to the Broncos, but they've gone about it differently now, Sam. And we've got this article here, as you can see. So the Melbourne Storm will field 7 teams across NRL male and female pathways in 2026. And the key one here is including a standalone reserve grade side for the first time in club history. So it's an absolutely huge milestone for rugby league in Victoria. Local juniors in the state will actually have a clear pathway. And we saw that in the train and trial list that we just touched on earlier, Sam, that they were all players that had come through the pathways. They weren't, like the Broncos, they had someone from like Kane Bradley from the Storm, Mason Teague from the Knights. They were all Preston Rickey from the Panthers. They all from the pathways of Melbourne, and it's absolutely outstanding. They'll also have their first ever official female sides that will play a key role in the expanded pathway system, entering under 17 and under 19s New South Wales Rugby League competitions, with obviously the eye looking towards a future NRLW license for the Melbourne Storm. It's absolutely huge. I don't want to go and spend my next 20 minutes of talking about this, but as you can see, it's absolutely huge for rugby league pathways down in Melbourne, Sam.
It is. It's an enormous milestone. It settles things down for these young kids who may have been born in Queensland and playing for Sunshine Coast, and then at a whim they've got to go down to training for the Melbourne Storm and whatnot. It just settles things down. It makes things more comfortable for everybody. So it can't be understated. For the Melbourne Storm now to be out of the Queensland Cup, to have their own teams in the New South Wales Cup forevermore, it's an enormous milestone, mate. So congratulations to the Melbourne Storm, and keep moving forward, Melbourne Storm. Well done.
Like you said, Sam, that's probably a big thing that I don't think gets talked about. Like they've got like North Sydney, and then they've got, they've got the sunny coast, and players are going to like have to play, go to Sydney or whatever, train, play, then fly back to Melbourne or whatever, and vice versa from Queensland and the Sunshine Coast. To have like them now being all able to just have some security and just being all down in Melbourne it's huge. They can get those players, whether it be from the Falcons or whatnot, if they like someone, that they can get down there and get them down to Melbourne, and they can stay down in Melbourne. They don't need to worry about, going from state to state. They can just stay in Melbourne. I think it's massive, and I wish them all the best with that. And with that NRLW news as well, that's huge for women and ladies and girls in Victoria as well, for a clearer pathway for them, not having to worry about, shit, pardon my French again, but I have to, move state to play in the top women's competition. There's now a clear pathway for those girls to come through. And the goal, we just saw the goal. I just read it out before. They want an NRLW license. So a club like the Melbourne Storm, I think they're probably going to get an NRLW license in that next window, whenever that is. I'm not sure, but I think it's a huge step that they're putting a lot into the women's game as well. Now, onto the new kit, Sam. The new kit for the Melbourne Storm. And look, that away jersey to me is just screaming. That is an attractive kit. That is a very nice away kit. I love the white, the purple. I love the sponsor, how they've done about it. There's no like background or anything behind the sponsor logo. It's just the text, red Z there. That looks great. Same with Budget Direct there on the sleeve. I really, 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 really love that away jersey. The home jersey looks a bit similar. There are some minor changes, obviously, from this year's to last year's, but yeah, for me, that away jersey to me is one of the best in the competition. I really love it that much. I'll go even further to say that it is better than that blue Broncos away jersey that we made, with that great history behind it. I absolutely love that. Just, it's lovely. Like, it's simple, and there's got some color to it. The sponsor integration as well on the jersey, how that's being put on the jerseys, great. I'm a big fan, Sam, big fan.
As you said, there's very little difference for the home jersey, and I do admit that it is a very clean looking white jersey that they got going. So I do agree with you for sure. Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, and can't wait to see Sewer causing havoc in that jersey. All right, let's round it up, Sam. Let's finish it off here with our top four our predictions for the 2026 Melbourne Storm. As you can see, similar to what Sam and I both said last night. So we've already penciled in two teams into our top four at this stage. So make sure you pull Sam and I up if we decide to try and put more than four teams into our top four. But Sam and I'll let Sam touch on it, but I believe they'll be in the bottom half of the top four. I'm thinking in that 3 to 4 range for me, just due to, I think their spine is unbelievable. Their backs are great. The forward pack is just where I think it just lacks a little bit. But I think that the quality that the Melbourne Storm have, that they should, again, finish in the top four. I think, again, like we touched on last night with the Broncos, Melbourne Storm should definitely be getting top 8. If they're not getting top 8, it is an absolute failure, just like the Broncos. But that's my point. I think the Storm in the top 4, in the bottom half of that top 4 in that 3-4 position, Sam.
All right. So for me, the Melbourne Storm over the past 2 years, despite their appearances in the grand final, I don't think they have been the best version of themselves. And throughout this offseason, while they haven't lost Manny and Wishart, they got to contend with that mentally, those players individually. And it's always a fascinating journey to see how those players who say, yeah, I'm going off the year after, how they play that upcoming season. It's always fascinating to me to see how they go. Their Achilles heel is going to lie in the forward pack, despite a nice pickup of a Davey Mawali. And it's exciting to see maybe the progression of Va'alepu and Lasati. Yeah, I very much to and froed about having them maybe 5th to 8th in that bracket. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt once more and say that they will be 4th. Yeah, I'll be specific about that. I think they will be 4th. I think Broncos will be the minor premiers for 2026. Jerome Hughes is interesting to me as well, Dor, because he won the Dally M medal, and then in 2025, despite being injury ravaged, and despite having some good games, I still don't think he rediscovered that form that got him to a Dally M medal in 2025. So he will be fascinating to see. Cameron Munster, he is just fully fledged, inked in, just an elite player that fights tooth and nail every single game. Suafaa Longo, though, for as exciting as he is, he's going to be asked a fair few questions in 2026, and we're going to see how mature he is. He's a very youthful young man. I believe he's only 21 years of age. So it's going to be interesting to see how he develops throughout the season. Harry Grant, obviously one of, if not the best hooker on the entire planet for rugby league. So yeah, Melbourne Storm, they can still do it, but the forward pack has been hit. And that gives me cause for concern that maybe they might be playing elimination finals footy in week 1 of the finals instead of qualifying finals footy. And what's also interesting as well, right, that Craig Bellamy, he's off contract at the end of this year. So the headaches that are going to be coming with all the conversations about will he or won't he will inevitably come. I'm going to say that he's going to re-sign for 1 more year as long as Cameron Munster is around. I think he'll be back in 2027. That's just a bold prediction from me before kickoff. But we talk about this Jersey Flegg side. I think that the Melbourne Storm, they have bought and they have developed incredibly well for their Jersey Flegg side to already have won a premiership. And this captain for the Jersey Flegg, Preston Conn, came down from Newcastle. So that's another one the Knights have had to say, God damn it. But Preston Conn won the Player of the Year in Jersey Flegg. And you've got this really young crop of blokes that have got all the talent in the world, but they can't fast track them. Craig Bellamy won't fast track this Jersey Flegg side. So I feel like they've still got a first grade team that can still crack it for a grand final. But from next year onwards, I don't want to say that they're hoping or relying upon this Jersey Flegg side to mature very quickly, but I feel like the next evolution of the Melbourne Storm, I think they might be in for a lean couple of years. I'm not saying out of the 8. I'm not saying wooden spoon or what have you. But I just think this year might actually be the last year that they have an opportunity to really threaten to win a premiership, because there's a lot of players moving on. Cameron Munster and, well, not Jerome Hughes, but Cameron Munster is getting closer to retirement. And so this Jersey Flegg side, they're going to have to, and reserve grade now for the Melbourne Storm, but this Jersey Flegg side, mate, they've got something good there, but unfortunately the Storm are just going to have to be patient. They're going to have to wait for them to fully develop. They can't just pop them in first grade all willy-nilly and whatnot. And as I said before, someone like a Keegan Russell Smith has all of a sudden got himself a huge 2026 campaign with the inevitable departure of Tyron Wishart, who's going to be that backup that backup halfback. And at the moment, even though it's on a train and trial deal, it is going to be Keegan Russell Smith. So, yeah, I think they're in for a pretty difficult campaign, but I still think they've got enough talent and skill to find themselves inside the top 4. But it will be 4th position for me for the Melbourne Storm in 2026. Dor.
You want a bold prediction?
Yes.
I reckon. I don't think Craig Bellamy extends. I reckon this will be his last year in Melbourne. It's been talked about for many years, and he just keeps on extending for 1 year. I think that last year would have hurt him a lot. I think he's extended for this season. I reckon it will be his last, and my bold prediction is the current Queensland Maroons coach, Billy the Kid Slater, will be the Melbourne Storm coach in 2027.
Well, you and I differ, mate. Well, we will see what happens when news inevitably drops later this year. We will come back to this moment. I think he will re-sign, and Dor thinks that he's going to exit stage left.
Yes, I've got the contracts up there as well that people can have a look at as well while we were talking then. But I think that's it. I think that's a really good review for the Melbourne Storm for this 2026 campaign. Look, they finished 2025. Unfortunately, runners up, second at the end of the regular season. Sam and I are both predicting third or fourth position. Sam locking in a 4th position. I think either 3 or 4, in my opinion. Probably, to be honest, I probably lean towards 4th position as well for the Melbourne Storm. But again, thank you everyone for watching. Make sure, if you haven't done so already, give Sam and Wobble and Jaw Sports a follow on all social media platforms. And if you don't follow the All Out Club and you're watching from Sam's Wobble and Jaw Sports, we would really appreciate, I would really appreciate a follow on whether it be YouTube or a subscription. Same with Sam, or likes and follows on our social media platforms. Otherwise, that is it for episode 2 in the Melbourne Storm.
Thank you, mate. Thanks, guys.
We will see you next episode for episode 3. We're going to keep it a secret as well. So you'll see us in episode 3 for another club. So thank you very much for watching and listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Catch up.